The Feast of Trumpets holds imagery that, obviously causes us to think about the rapture. But it also shows us a picture of a wake-up call to judgment. And I think that's something that's very compelling too, because the Feast of Trumpets is a joyful thing, but it's also the beginning of the days of awe that are clearly tied to judgment and are clearly tied to images we see in the book of Revelation that are tribulation images. So joy and judgment are both very strong images that converge at this feast. Now, understanding this pattern, the enemy seems to be very aware of this as well. We've talked about that. There's a reason why the world leaders are poised to usher in the covenant with many every single trumpets, every single fall. They have their big bad guy meeting coinciding with this every single fall for a reason. I believe Satan knows God's patterns too. And he's not in charge of when the final 7 years begins, but he's ready each fall because he believes the fall feast usher in this time. Now, 1 year, the final seven is going to begin. The tribulation period will end in the fall with Jesus's return. So it stands to reason that it's also going to begin then, especially since we have the day counts. And it lasts 7 years. 1,250 days, that's how long it lasts. So we know the day counts. The tribulation is specifically for the salvation of Israel. But as with God's mercy, many others will also receive mercy when they put their trust in the God of Israel. When they put their trust in Jesus, there's going to be this huge multitude that come in. Now, Jeremiah 37, how awful that day will be, this 7 year period, the day of the Lord. None will be like it. It is the time of Jacob's distress, the time of Jacob's trouble, but he will be saved out of it. And him and a multitude that can't be counted. So what happens next? What happens next is the 10 days of awe. And so these 10 days, I think this is very compelling. These 10 days, trumpets begins this time that's also called as the days of awe. These are the final 10 days of the 40 days of return, this time of Tisha B'Av, from the Elul 1 to Tishri 10. But in this time right here, you see Feast of Trumpets is 2 days. Tishri 10, Yom Kippur, is 1 day. There are 7 days in between. And this right here is a picture of the 7 days of the tribulation, the 7 years of the tribulation. These seven, Daniel's 70th week, the tribulation period. And so during these days, the tradition, again, is that the books in heaven are opened. And what's done during this time can alter eternity. And a common greeting during this time is, may you be inscribed. May you be inscribed in the book of life. Revelation 3:8, and all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, the Antichrist, whose names are not written in the book of life from the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. And so those whose names are not inscribed in the Lamb's book of life are going to worship the Antichrist. And then Revelation 20:12. And I saw the dead, great and small, standing before the throne, and the books were opened. And another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged by what was written in the books according to their deeds. Now, that's the great white throne judgment. That is not the judgment that Christians will be at. That's the judgment for those who are lost, who never received Jesus. And then Revelation 20:15, and whosoever was not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire. And so we see this picture of During the tribulation period, people will have this opportunity to receive Jesus and be inscribed. And so that brings us to the 10th day of the Day of Awe, which is the Feast of Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. And this is the day when the books in heaven are closed. So the books that were opened on trumpets are closed on Yom Kippur, and everybody is sealed either for good or for bad. And think about it, when Jesus returns, what's done is done. If you've received him, you've received him. If you haven't, then you're sealed. At that moment that he returns, all the decisions have been made. So this is the day most scholars believe Jesus will return at the end of the tribulation. And this is the holiest day of the year according to the Bible. This is the only day where only one person, the high priest, could go into the Holy of Holies to make atonement for the people, only on this one day. And so this is the day Moses descended after making atonement for Israel. And remember, we looked at his 8 ascensions to the mountain after the Exodus. And this was after he finished the second 40 days and 40 nights on Sinai. And so this feast is kept by fasting. It's a day of afflicting the soul. And then 5 days later is the Feast of Tabernacles. And so this is the 15th of the month. It's on the full moon. And this is a memorial of when Israel dwelt in the wilderness with God in tents. And so most scholars believe that this will be at least partially fulfilled during the millennial reign and then completely fulfilled with a new heaven and a new earth when we are face to face with God, no longer in temporary dwellings, but living face to face with him. So, um, it's a joy. For us, for Christians, we're like, ooh, we're seeing this, we're seeing these things happen. It's bittersweet because we know what's coming on both sides. And it's like the Feast of Trumpets, the picture there of the intersection between joy and sweetness and also judgment. And so it can be difficult to navigate because we know we're about to see our King, but we know for those who do not know him, it is the beginning of the worst time. So what a joy to know that one day we're going to see these final feasts fully fulfilled. One day we're going to see what all these things, all the little details of these things we're pointing to, just like we can look back and we can see what the details of Passover and Pentecost were pointing to. And we have so much to look forward to. And I love this Revelation 3:3 because we need this reminder that we are supposed to watch. Jesus commands us to watch. And if you watch, you're going to not be caught off guard. But if you don't watch, well, he says that if you do not watch, I will come on you as a thief, and you will not know what hour I will become upon you. So that's interesting. So we're to keep watch, and he wants us to be expectant. What bridegroom doesn't want his bride in her wedding dress, excited and anticipating the sound of his coming? Of course, he wants us to do that. And so look up and be encouraged and know, regardless of what day or days he comes on, we see the day approaching, and just be encouraged that you are alive to see these things unfold, and he's given you the amazing gift of having eyes to see and ears to hear for such a time as this. And so be encouraged and look up and be excited for this month and all the things that we're going to see unfold. So God bless you guys, and God willing, we'll see you next week and have more encouragement to share.